Welcome to the Grit and Grain podcast, where we explore and celebrate the craft beer industry, community, and history in Tacoma, Washington, and surrounding Pacific Northwest areas. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let's get to it.
Welcome to part 2 of episode 1 of the Grit and Grain podcast. So once again, we're here with Sean Jackson, Ron Swarner, and then our wonderful guest, Shane Johns, who's been telling us the story of...
Who are you?
Oh, my name's Matt.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, my name is Matt McLaren. And again, we're here with Shane Johns from E9 Brewing and kind of hearing the whole story of how he's really changed beer in Tacoma and how deeply the history of this brewery runs here. So we're going to talk about some nerdy shit on this one, which is what I'm really here for. So speaking of which, Shane, what are we drinking, man?
I think we're drinking That's a Knife, right?
We are drinking That's a Knife.
Yeah, so this is a fun little project that Trevor from DeGard came up and Lindsay came up, and we were actually barrel warehousing in a underground cellar at the time. And so they came up on a Saturday, and I met them. They had been drinking the night before, so Lindsay was pretty hungover. But me and Trevor, we started digging through barrels, and I had some fun barrels that he liked, and I was like, ooh, we should do this, and we tried probably like 40 barrels and came up with a 3-barrel blend, and we dry hopped it at the time with Nelson, which was
nice and fresh at that point.
Yeah, exceedingly hard for me to get.
Yeah.
It was one of those hops that was just like a real pain in the balls.
That was the new hot shit, man.
Yeah, totally new hot shit. I could get 22 pounds a year. That's what I had.
Jesus.
And
now I'm a home brewer. I can get it anytime.
Oh yeah,
totally. Like
now, yeah, exactly.
It wasn't even that long before they let cretins like me buy it.
Yeah, totally. And so we used all 22 pounds on 7 barrels of beer, and that was I think it was super spicy, and I learned a lot from this beer, mostly because I learned that dry hopping at that ratio was not worthwhile because bottle conditioning was going to strip half the character away.
Oh, yeah.
You needed to do it in a different fashion. So we actually, all of our beers that are done in this kind of fashion are done differently now just because of that beer.
Really?
Yep, totally. Learn, always learn.
Good pull, buddy.
Yeah.
So this is I bought every bottle you guys would let me buy when I first got this.
we didn't make as many bottles as people think.
I know. So I've been sitting. This was a good occasion. I've been sitting on one for a while.
Trevor actually bought a lot of the cases.
Did he?
Yeah.
So why do you and Trevor get along so well?
Oh, that's a random story.
I figured.
Again, me and Sean were weirdos, and we were doing this stuff before it was a thing.
Yep.
People that were doing it were Allagash and Russian River and New Belgium.
Yep.
It wasn't nearly as prevalent as it is today. And so a newfangled brewery was opening up. And a buddy of mine browbeat me into going with him for the first release from this brewery in Tillamook. I'm like, dude, that is so far of a drive, and I don't really feel like doing that. It's my one day off this week.
So random.
At the time, my girlfriend was like, I'm out of here to go to California anyways. And I was like, oh, God. Okay, I'll go do this with you, but you're picking me up. And he's like, dude, will you drive? He lived in Olympia. And he was like, will you drive to Olympia? And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll drive to Olympia. But you're driving both ways. I'm going to drink as much as I want. And he's like, it's cool. We're going to do a crazy bottle share beforehand, and I promise you Fafoon. And I was like, oh, sold.
All right.
My 3 ounces of Fafoon sold me on 8 hours of driving.
Dude, at the time, Fafoon was so much beer currency, man.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of great beers drank, but we showed up, and I don't know how he was involved with them, but it was like us and 4 people in the very first DeGard basement,
Yeah.
sharing beers, and it was like all the big whales of the time. You know, there was like Anchorage, or not Anchorage at the time. It was M from Midnight Sun.
Yeah.
And Fafoon and all sorts of big whales drank between 7 people. Trevor rolled in late, and we were drinking in the basement of his tap room before that. And honestly, it was like whatever. We'll see how his beers are. I was just there. I had drank those beers with the tasting room. Went outside. He was out there sitting on the back of his car smoking a cigarette. I'm like, oh, well, I like this guy because I have a smoking problem. And so I smoked a cigarette with the dude, and I just started asking him about his yeast, And I don't think he thought much of it, to be honest.
That's a great icebreaker, by the way.
Yeah, I'm just like...
Tell me about your yeast, bro.
Yeah, totally. Like, he didn't know me, so I was just like... He had just been drinking beers with me in the basement of his tap room.
Yeah.
And then I caught him trying to sneak a smoke out, and he's
Nice.
like, oh, as a random dude who's also smoking. So I was like, we're cool, man. And then I'm like, what yeast strains are you using? and of course he was like, what? He's like, I'm all spontaneous. I'm like, oh, really? You're spontaneous, huh? Mm-hmm. And so immediately I'm like, yeah, right. I don't believe that for a second. But...
That Tillamook terroir.
Yeah,
dude.
totally. Bullshit. And then it really, he had his first big party 5 or 6 months after that, and he, my buddy, was like, "Hey, Trevor wants to know if you'll send him a 6-barrel of beer." And because we talked, I was like, I'm a brewer, man. When I asked about the yeast, I'm like, no, I'm a professional brewer.
Yeah.
And Trevor was like, hey, that dude, I've never tried any of his beers. I want to get a 6-barrel of his beer. You say he makes sour beer. Let's try his sour beer.
Yeah.
And I sent him a batch 1 Golden Berry. And he called me during the middle of his own event and was like, hey, this beer's pretty amazing, dude. And I'm like, well, it's pretty nice. I live in a great fruit area of the world.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And I'm pretty lucky to have that availability of those fruits. And we've been fast friends since then, and we go back and forth and give each other all sorts of grief and whatnot since then. And so whenever he's around, or I'm around down there, stop by, harass each other. Maybe we try some barrels, come up with a blend. It's not really tight and fast or anything like that. Like all these beers that we've done since then, it's mostly like, hey, dude, I'll be in town tomorrow.
Let's put something together.
Yeah, let's just walk around in the barrels.
Yeah.
Let's talk shit. See how life is going. Try some beers. We'll come up with some kind of weird concept.
Right.
So all of our beers with them is that. That's what it is.
Right. So you found a like-minded dude who's doing something similar at the time when there was only really small pockets of people even trying shit like what you guys were doing when you kind of got the freedom to expand a little bit.
Yep.
You had all your barrels. And so so Desgard, there's hopefully people listening are familiar with Desgard, I'm sure, but one of the most sort of legendary Northwest sour beer makers and fruited beer makers. And the first beer thing that I ever did, when I kind of got back into the industry, I was buying at a big box liquor store, and some of the other employees were having a sour night, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but I'm new here, so I'll be there, to meet everybody or whatever, and there was Desgard booze stuff there, and I just had no clue what I was getting into, and it was those beers and a couple others, some brewery stuff, some Cascade stuff. And I was same thing with the Rodenbach. It was I was hooked after that. My mouth was watering for sour beers 4 or 5 days later. And when I was talking, I decided I was getting into this, and I've talked to these guys about it, but it was not super long after that where I was like, all right, I'm going to study and, try and get to the industry and network. And Kent Wetzler, we were hanging out not too long after Edison City opened, and he said something about E9 having the best barrel program, one of the best barrel programs on the West Coast. And my recollection of E9 is like prior to your guys' work there. Like I grew up in the brewery. I grew up in the Harmon, and there was a lot of overlap in employees there, and so a lot of my like childhood was spent in E9. And yeah, dude, I worked for Mike Davis. That was my first job, was shoveling his wet grain.
Yeah.
But before I could appreciate his tutelage at the time,
He's brewer 3, I think.
What's that?
Brewer 3 at E9.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Brewer 3.
And then he went to Harmon
Harmon,
right after
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was, he was
Marine
bringing
biologist.
Yeah. And so like, and when Ken said that, I was just like, God, no, like, no fucking way. Like, I've had E9 beer. Like, I probably don't know a ton, but like, I feel like I know that. And it was like him saying that. And I think I hunted down a bottle, and within a week, I was like, Jesus Christ, like, this would, in my head, it would stand up next to all of the Desgard beer or the Cascade beer or the brewery beer that I had at that little event that I did. And I didn't know shit at that time, but I could tell that like, whatever these guys were doing, it was all similar, and they were all trying to like aim for this thing. And yeah, it was like this weird revelatory moment. But it was all these breweries kind of at a similar time, like popping up, trying sour shit out, trying to like isolate some yeast strains, isolate some local bacteria, which you guys also did.
Yeah, no, totally. So a lot of our stuff is Tacoma derived, right? So,
Which I think maybe a lot of people don't quite know how that
no,
works.
I mean, it literally comes off of Carboy, off of 6th Avenue.
Yeah.
South of, what's the name of that Mexican spot? Mimo's. It wasn't Mimo's that time, but it's an apartment complex down that way. A good friend of ours who is super into Saison and super into mixed culture beers, Trevor, who is a wonderful human being and does really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Was super into that style of beer. And we became fast friends. We actually got introduced through the head brewer at Powerhouse, Tim Patty. Tim Patty was like, "Oh, you'll like Shane. Go talk to him."
He's also a fucking nerd.
Yeah, totally. He likes this kind of beer.
Yeah.
You will like that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And Trevor showed up, and I was like, "Oh, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Interesting. He's got cool insights. He's totally interested in read. I'm a researcher. I love reading books. I love like chasing it. Right. So I'm like, oh, how can I make like I'll read it all.
Yeah.
And Trevor is a similar individual, and so we're fast friends. And he's like, I'm doing the spontaneous fermentations for Tacoma. I'm like, oh yeah. And this is years before we actually got the strain, I think. And he did a full 2-year fermentation before we actually took the strain from him.
Capturing Tacoma.
Yep,
like natural
100%.
Tacoma yeast.
Yep,
from the air.
wild off of the apartment complex south of Mimos.
Yep.
Or west, I guess it would be west of Mimos.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh man. And I've actually had it sequenced at this point too now. So it's 2 different Brettanomyces strains, a wild Saccharomyces and Pediococcus.
Yep.
But and so that went into Little Barrel. And Little Barrel got a year. And then we're like, oh, Little Barrel tastes pretty good. Let's move Little Barrel to the next step, and let's move it to a 52-gallon a barrel and see how it does then. And I still actually have that barrel. Barrel M is actually what it is. And Barrel M is still running around E9, and it's a mother barrel. And
what's a mother barrel for folks?
it's a barrel that we use for inoculation of new oak. We don't. Occasionally I use Barrel M in a blend, but it's pretty rare. We usually, I'll rack it out, and it'll get parceled into other things.
Sure. So just to like break that down for everybody, there's literally a barrel of beer sitting in your space that is just Tacoma air in it, basically.
Yeah, it's Tacoma's. The thing is that we have domesticated her as much as possible.
Sure. So it plays nice with your other shit?
Yeah, totally. And she plays nice now. You know what I mean? She didn't always play nice.
Yeah.
We domesticated her as much as we could, and we have. We got rid of that problem. So we learned her. I think that's what the Belgians actually have done better than everybody, or know better, is that they know their spontaneous yeast and how it works,
right?
And they know how to make it work for themselves.
How to kind of corral it a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that's
get
what
they want out of
brewing really is like manipulating a yeast strain. You're making a home for a yeast strain to
Yep.
manipulate it, and it's learning it. There's lots of like some of the best breweries in the world use one yeast strain and have done that for hundreds of years.
Yep.
U.S. breweries are weirdos because we use lots of different yeast strains,
Yep.
and we try to manipulate.
You get a
tons
fresh
of,
one every eight
yeah,
rounds.
totally. That's just a freaky weird thing for Europeans, and again, we're just chasing, what the Europeans have been able to accomplish. It's a weird thing, Think about European breweries. Westlettern is a great example. They
Yep.
make 4 beers. They make 4 world-class beers.
Right.
Are you going to drink those beers every day? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
They're delicious. U.S. breweries, we have to compete in a different arena and a different way. I'm not a monastery. I don't own the building for the last 250 years. I haven't paid off my equipment, 800 years ago. I don't have relationships with maltsters and hop growers for hundreds of years, and they give me great deals.
Right.
So it's just a different thing, and the competition level is way different. Like Brussels Beer Project is making super waves in Belgium,
Yeah.
because they're an upstart. You know what I
Right.
mean? And they're big. They're humongous. I got a buddy that works for them. They're not joking around. Like the way they're growing is much bigger than any brewery in Washington that I know of right now has grown in a very long time.
Sure.
Maybe it's Georgetown. Maybe Georgetown's like what they did. And Georgetown was a long time ago. And they hit at a perfect time, and they had everything dialed in.
Changed right at the right
Oh
time.
man, they hit everything right. There's those breweries. Boneyard's another one. Boneyard hit it all perfect.
Sure.
Mac and Jack's perfect. Hammered it. Like there's breweries that have just really had the timing, and everything has worked in their advantage. And the old school breweries, they that's not even a thing. They don't care.
Right.
Because they didn't scale for that ever. They're not
Right.
like, oh, I need to grow. They're like, no, we make this much beer. Oh, you guys want it that much? Yeah, we'll charge you $1 more a bottle.
You have a shiny new brewery. Are you happy?
I do have
I
a
was
shiny
going to
new
say,
brewery.
I think
Are you
all
happy
this,
with it? Anything you
well-
would change?
Oh, I'm pretty lucky. I got to design it.
Yeah.
Not everybody can say that. No, there's nothing I would change. I would change how I've done stuff this year.
It's been a weird couple of years. I think you get a pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to give myself that pass, Matt. But no, I wouldn't change anything. Like I said, I'm super lucky. I got great people that work for me, and I've always had great people that work for me. And fruit being late this year, the agricultural this year is real bad. I'm a little worried about it. That being said, I got to work with a new fruit this week, so I'm pretty excited about that. I haven't
What
worked
fruit?
with it. Apra prunes. You guys know what that is?
No.
It's the opposite of a pluot. So pluot is like a plum
and
apricot, right?
Yeah.
That leans towards plums.
Okay.
Apriprum is a plum apricot that leans towards apricots.
Whoa.
So pretty excited about that. And I was that's my first score on those particular fruit. I'm gonna get those in tomorrow. I'll get to taste them. So then I get to come up with some kind of weird blend for it and get weird.
Do nerdy stuff.
Yeah.
So, so with you guys opening a new space and then kind of at the same time rebranding a little bit, like you said, you don't make 4 beers. You don't have 1,000 years of highly developed, singular style focus. So a lot of what you guys have done has been trying to maintain relevance in a super competitive dynamic market. How much did the new space and the rebrand affect that, do you think?
Well, are you running out of colors for your cans?
Yeah, well, Don's developing something new for that, Ron. You just wait. It's coming.
Okay.
No. Yes. I think, again, the market's dynamic, and we got to continue to grow. We've always been a brewery that I don't have time to stop thinking about something I can do new.
Yep.
I mean, we came out with Nameless. We did 57 Namelesses, and that was before anybody was doing anything like that, which was changing the hop bill on every single batch of beer.
Yeah.
We ran 2 years, and then all of a sudden, Firestone Walker's doing that same thing.
Yeah.
And it was unusual because Mr. Walker came by the brewery, and we chatted for quite some time, and then all of a sudden, that shit's coming out.
Oh, crazy! You did the thing we've been doing.
Very nice guy. Love him to death.
Handsome
you.
as
Yeah.
can all
beautiful.
get out.
Oh, that
Handsome
is
as shit.
God.
I love that guy. But he had a thing for coming by every year, and then all of a sudden, something was coming out.
Perfectly tan, just
He's
everything.
gorgeous.
Yeah, he is.
Like, whoa.
And that
Hey,
hair.
guys.
Great individual. So, I think that I like doing that. I like trying new things. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that it's hard to label, and it's hard to market, and it's hard to do all sorts of things with it. We're trying to be many things at once. And so we're just trying to continually improve and be a better brewery and be better to our production team and sales team. But yeah, I mean, I have no intentions of not creating new beers, and we're going to continue pushing. And I can't see us not doing that. And honestly, at this point, my brewers are starting to get a little itchy. We haven't really done some just like Shane's little fun projects lately for a while.
Yeah.
And so they're all starting to get a little itchy.
Hopefully, Apropums will.
That's probably not going to.
we needed.
There's probably not going to. That'll satisfy the cellar crew for a little bit, but not probably the brewers. So you'll probably start seeing some newer beers coming out in the next 2 quarters, just because those guys are real itchy, and I'm all about that. I want, again, part of it is developing them.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. I feel like I had that
agree with that.
opportunity, and I hope that I've tried to do that for all the employees that I've had, is let them develop. And, again, I want E9 University.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, I think anybody would make a case that that's probably still an existing concept.
yeah, whatever we can do to improve it and put people in the position where they can succeed and do the things that they want to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to always be able to provide that, and so I want to give them the education and the ability to go do that wherever they want to go.
You also brought in some visiting professors. Did you enjoy the collaboration series?
Ron, a lot of that was like I knew all those guys.
Yeah.
It was a lot of cat herding. Uh,
I love Kissimmee.
yeah, that was a great beer. That's a fun
delicious.
beer. Yeah, I mean, Matt's such a good dude.
Yeah.
Matt was fucking... so I knew Matt before I knew Sean. We worked together at the Bayou. And that was Sean's big
Cornbread.
rival for his hire.
Really?
Yeah. And,
Oh, absolutely.
which
slash
was
some
weird
tires,
because they were
Sean?
home brewing partners. And I ended up hiring Sean, and then Matt ended up moving down to Hood River and getting the job at Double Mountain. I
made the right choice. I had the resume. All the things he learned from
Been
fucking me.
15 years, Sean. Calm the fuck down.
And on a side note, the first time we ever really talked about beer stuff was because we were both independently making weed-based beers on the home front.
I don't deny that.
I
You guys
was
were so ahead of the game, man.
Yeah, well,
Pursuing the art of extracting THC into beer. And
it's alcohol
I
based.
found out that Shane on the home front was doing the same project.
Came out really
that
well.
was
by the way.
our first real, contact.
Oh, we're
and,
gonna
like,
work together.
And via Coughlin, he's like, "Oh, I know a guy who's doing the same thing." I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's talk to that guy."
That was highly illegal in those time frames.
Yes. Funny story on that note.
Yeah.
We got dropped off a sample bottle of beer from a home brewer, and
Yeah.
he listed all the ingredients that were in it. And about the 12th one, I kind of fucking checked out. And it had sat in our back for months and months. And finally one day, I was like, let's crack this and check it out. Cracked the bottle, and it instantly carbonated itself into just gas and head, and then reduced itself. I was like, oh, that's fucking weird. Never seen that in my life. And so it pours out some samples, and I think I went first, and it was just I could feel the heat going down my body, and then it went to my toes, and then rolled back up in a hot flush.
It was super peppery.
And Shane was like,
super peppery.
"How is it?" And I was like, being a dick, I was like, "Oh, it's fine." So he takes. So about probably ingredient 16, when I had already checked out, was cocoa leaves.
Oh shit!
Oh shit! Yeah.
Oddly enough, in that time period, that wasn't abnormal for home brewers to have their own little cocoa plants at home.
Yeah.
I had run into a few
Yeah.
that had. I saw a giant bush, the best bush of cocoa plant I've ever seen in a person's beautiful house. I was like, had no idea. I was like, "What's that plant?" That's a cocoa plant, Shane. Like, Jesus. It was an intern at the time at the brewery. Doug was big on interns. We had numerous of them, and
Dude, the cocoa beer.
it was a monster cocoa plant. And I
My
was like,
toes are numb.
yeah, I was like, that's crazy. I had a softball game that night, so I took a little leaf for myself and
Just chewed on it.
played a hell of a shortstop that night, boys.
Nice.
Hell of a shortstop.
To keep it on the funny level,
Of course.
in any brewery, there's always a favorite fuck up. And between my experience at E9, why don't I start this with telling you mine? While I have fucked some stuff up in a brewery, this was my favorite E9 fuck up. So I was tasked with cleaning a jockey box, and I ran the lines and was cleaning it out, and the inside was a little gross. So cold plates is sort of the chilling mechanism for some jockey boxes. There's different methods. They're made of aluminum. What I was cleaning it with was caustic. And if you don't know that caustic and aluminum should not be combined, well, then you were fucking me. Who should have known better, but didn't. So
You made the right choice. I had a resume.
I'm in the brewery. Door is closed. It's a tiny place, and I'm soaking it in caustic. So it is literally dissolving and creating a noxious fume.
Yeah, exactly.
That I am sitting there huffing. And seriously, I'm it was already a good day, but I'm doing my job. I'm, getting ready to transfer a beer. And I'm like, fucking today is badass. I don't know what it is, but
I'm in an unusually good
everything is
mood.
awesome right now. And so, yeah, this is going to explain a lot going forward. And then he walks in the brewery. Couple steps, he's like, what the fuck are you doing? He just pokes around and is like, seriously, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm doing this. Dumps it out. Eventually he saves whatever brain cells I got left.
I was gonna say, man.
It's pretty cool about the whole situation. That was
Just idling fumes. The
that
whole
was my
fucking
favorite E9 fuck up.
Yeah.
I feel like he should go. And then I've got another one that's kind of
Wow.
a combo story.
We're gonna take a quick break, but
That explains 20
yeah.
barley wines tapped at once.
The ability of.
We'll be back in just a second to hear Sean's second favorite fuck up. Welcome back. Once again, please make sure, if you haven't yet, check out Channel 253. Wonderful local Actually, Doug here, our producer, is Channel 253. But if you guys want to stay connected to the community in Tacoma, that's a great way to do it. There's wonderful local folks putting on podcasts, talking about the things that are important to them and to the community as a whole. So go on, support those guys. It's not particularly expensive, and it's a great way to stay connected. Channel253.com/memberships. So, all right, we heard Sean's fuck up story.
Yeah, now it's time.
So Shane
our
must have a
guest of
fuck up
honor.
story then.
Let's
If we're
do
doing
the
fuck up
best
stories.
Fuck up story.
I've had many, but I think one of my most memorable was a couple months into my first tenure, or my tenure there, and I was going to a barbecue at Doug's house. He said, "Hey, go pick up the 6 barrel of this blonde. You're gonna have to rack that out." And I was being very lackadaisical. I didn't live too far from the brewery at that point in my life, so I walked down there in my flip flops and shorts, and I filled up the 6 barrel, and I was not paying attention. And at that, it's a weird cellar. That's a weird cellar. I was in the serving cellar, and I unscrewed the clamp for the valve instead of the keg fill. And so I shot the valve off with 17 PSI, dented the tank in front of it.
Oh,
And
that's a bullet.
Yeah, drenched myself. Eventually
Took a
eventually got the valve and back on and closed it. Lost the 99% of the beer out of the tank.
How many gallons?
So I was soaking wet head to toe, blinded, as it were. Luckily, I didn't actually take a valve to the dome, so that was good.
Still handsome.
Yeah, super lucky.
Is that what happened to you, Sean?
Yeah, and
That's the next story.
I made the phone call to Doug, who was waiting for his keg of beer that I was supposed to procure. And I was like, yo, dude, I totally fucked up and dumped that whole batch of beer. And he was like, well, guess what you get to do right now? You get to mill that beer so we can brew it on Monday. And I'm like, great.
Oh, man.
So I'm soaked head to toe. I felt ashamed. And so I did the mill. And then, Doug didn't get his keg for a couple extra hours because I had to go home and shower and change
Get
clothes.
unsticky.
Oh, man. Well, it was coated in flour after, I stripped off my shirt before I did the mill just to, because that was all I could do to even do anything.
Just a layer of sourdough on your fucking
so
leg.
it was a long barbecue. And I didn't live that down for quite many years. I think I didn't live that down. I don't. Maybe Doug still remembers it. He gave me so much shit for so long about that he might not anymore. But that was definitely. I've screwed up so many times. I working in a manufacturing facility. If you don't make an error, you're a better person than me.
What are you even doing?
You don't have any good stories.
Yeah, you're just a better person.
So there's
Probably have all
lowlights.
your appendages and brain cells, but
Yeah.
So what are the highlights then? You guys, those are lowlights, right? Fuck up stories. What are the highlights?
I mean, I got one more.
Yeah.
And one more
To
fuck up
finish out
story.
the explanation of.
Okay.
So we had this. It was a tiny fermenter, being what was it? A 1-barrel fermenter, and it was on a tripod stand, and it was on wheels, and part of the brewery's flat, but getting it up into our cooler, there's a little bit of a ramp, and so we were moving it, and it fell down, and I suppose that amount of weight was probably. 250 pounds-ish?
Maybe more than that, yeah.
Maybe more than that. So it falls down, and
It's awkward.
it's really hard to get back up. So we come up with this honestly fantastic fucking plan of raising it. We get some tie-down straps, and we wrap it around the belly of the fermenter, and I get a dolly, and the plan is to get the dolly underneath it and prop it up, and then Shane was on the other end with the straps to pull it. Things are going great.
It sounds
We
like
get up about 30, 35 degrees, And at that point, I'm starting to help push, so I'm straddling the dolly. And we get it up, and then the bottom wheels sort of catch, and it was straight up Tom and Jerry. So it falls down with 250 pounds behind it, hits the lip of the dolly, which then springs up into this still fucking handsome face.
Oh my God, dude.
Just like the rake on Tom and Jerry. I have been hit with some things in my life, but I've never been brained like that. And so this will round out the explanation of why I am me. It's not that I'm happy all the time. I'm just not smart enough to be fucking sad.
Sean doesn't give himself enough credit. He rallied right then, and we got that bad boy up right after that.
Fucking A, we did. Yeah, we did.
Next try. Right? Sean. Come on. We almost got it that time.
Yeah. We did.
I can like picture it and hear the music playing in my head, like for the fucking.
Anybody with more sense would have given up at that point, but not this caustic huffer. In it to win it. Another fun story. Hot tub whirlpool.
Yeah, so hot tub whirlpool was definitely a thing.
I like how well established it is that you're just like.
It was before my time, but you know, you never get away from it because you see the ass prints in the bottom of the whirlpool. And so that was definitely. It could have been
for everybody who enjoys E9 beer.
Yeah, totally. So it could have been pre-Rhett time. I know Rhett was involved in that. Jason was definitely involved in that. So it could have postdated them, and they could have learned from somebody else. But they were definitely it was a fun time in the E9's history, and UPS was a great catalyst of that. And you know, Jason was living in his van and picking up chicks, and you know, it was a happening spot. You know, Thursday through Sunday, that was a happening spot. And I don't. Most people haven't probably seen that, but the whirlpool you could set up so that it would spin beautifully warm water, whatever temperature water you wanted it, and you could sit in it, and it would steam up the whole brewery, and nobody could see it, and you could be sitting in it. You could be doing whatever you wanted, I guess. And they probably did whatever they wanted. And that probably happened a lot, enough to put ass prints in the bottom of that whirlpool.
It is not an uncommon thing. My previous brewing experience at Mud Shark, that was a thing. It was New Year's Eve, and our owner and a couple gals just decided that
It definitely wasn't the owner of E9 that was doing that.
yeah, man, it's kind of a thing. Like, but in the previous one, it was always sort of like
there wasn't very many benefits,
like, no,
and
like,
there wasn't high-paying job.
It was my job to clean that shit. I'm like, no. Like, no. I'm glad you're having a good time, and this is your place. So, yeah.
Wiping off ass prints.
Yeah,
from
I would definitely not say that any owner of the brewery ever knew about that. Maybe the John and those guys because they asked about it, or or yeah.
Am I seeing things, or does that look like an aspirin? Like, oh.
Well, it was really obvious. Like, if you had to clean it, you knew where the aspirins were in the whirlpool for sure. I was actually told they were aspirins. That's how I know about that story. Because I was like, wow, it's real weird divots you got. It's very, very hard to clean. Very hard to clean. Like, yep, that's an aspirin.
Oh my god. I can't. Like, you've worked at two places. I guess I didn't know this was a common practice.
I mean, anybody.
2005 was a great time.
The fucking Wild West. We were brewers, and we were kings.
Well, there wasn't much financial gain.
I was gonna say that's exactly like
Let's put it that way.
we don't get health benefits, but like every other Saturday we
Yeah.
we use the whirlpool as a hot
Some
tub.
random girl is taking me to the hot tub whirlpool. Hey, I'm 20-something. Good times.
Yo, right next to the college.
Yeah. Man, I miss those years.
Dude.
I didn't get to do that. That's the unfortunate fact.
Yeah. Most
It's a different
fucked up
time
shift
now,
you've
Shane.
worked.
What the shifts I worked.
Yeah. Not including festivals, because that's a given.
Yeah. Festivals. Ugh. I don't know about that. I have a, I can get fiery as a person, sort of a given.
I don't mean bad things going on. I mean like overindulgence. Night before or day of.
Oh, man. That's all early in my career, dude. I don't remember any of those times.
Yeah, good job. Good
So they were
job.
good then.
Yeah.
Did Thursday afternoons drinking still happen?
No, so those days, we changed that day a lot of times. You're talking about the beer tasting,
Yeah.
Ron?
With Donna?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've tasted thousands of beers probably. How
Dare you?
We've moved that. I mean, that was a crazy. Again, that was early. I was young. We were ambitious. We tasted beer from all over the country. I definitely was drinking, Hill Farmstead growlers and drinking all stuff. That was how I met Trevor at Descartes. It was because I was that person. But we changed days. It got weird. It got maybe overly invited.
Right.
People were showing up just to maybe get a taste of some Hill Farmstead.
Totally.
And bringing, you're like, hey, please bring a bottle of really. So that was the concept, was that people would bring a bottle of beer that they were like, yo, this hangs with what's going to be drank. And then people were started to bring in like, harp. And you're like,
Just so you know, in
Yo,
the defense
dude.
of all of those people, when I got like I mentioned earlier that I got invited to like a sour tasting with like some of my work friends for my first beer job.
Yeah.
I didn't know shit, so I brought a bottle of Irish Death,
yeah.
which was lovely, but didn't super fit the theme.
Yeah.
And didn't totally hang with like.
we didn't have a theme so much on a weekly
But you
basis.
had an echelon.
Yes, we had an echelon. And honestly, there was people that would just be like, bring the worst beer they can find. Because it wasn't just about having the best beer possible, because if all you drink is the best beer possible, you never understand that that's the best beer possible.
Gotcha.
So you got to drink a plethora of different beer.
Yeah.
And it was more of a disrespect of the situation that we had going on. And so we changed days a couple times. And yes, we continue
keep the
that
normies
for...
out?
Man, Ron, probably
Long time.
more than a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it just industry folks initially?
It was just industry folks. We definitely burned bridges. We had a bunch of like GABF judges that would show up occasionally,
Sure.
and it was random. So there's definitely like it was an invitee kind of thing.
Sure.
And we definitely had people like Mr. Wexler made one critical error one time and brought a brewery industry rep. And
Those guys are the worst. Those guys are the fucking worst.
Well, it's fine.
Fucking parasites.
It was fine. It was fine if the person had to realize that
Yeah.
all things were equal and you were not bound to be praised and loved. Like, because that was not a praise and love tasting. It was
a pursuit of enlightenment tasting.
Yes. And so he walked in. He presented a beer. He was fucking, that beer was shredded.
Yeah.
And that person turned 77. Like, I was used to having my beer shredded.
Sure.
Like, that's just the norm. Like,
Yeah.
shit, man. Best beer I ever had was like, yeah, that's a terrible fucking beer, Shane.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay, moving on. You know what I mean?
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, totally. Well,
See you
that's
next
it.
week.
Expectation is high.
Yeah.
And so that person didn't take it well. And I had to be like, he walked in at such a terrible time because the person that was drinking his beer is a total, World Beer Cup judge, GABF judge, and he walked in and that person was decimating that beer.
So sweet.
Oh yeah. Then we had this whole thing about pouring it on the cement, like it was like a big deal. We were like, oh, we're throwing it to the cement god kind of thing, and
Nerds.
oh yeah, we were total nerds. And so I felt terrible for that person. I actually, after they left, which was very immediately, had to be like, dude, you guys just fucking shredded that guy. And they were all like, it is what it is, man. It's like, oh, dude. And the new brewery is actually what stopped it. We haven't done it. Even after I had kids, I have tons of pictures of my kids being down at those tastings.
Sure.
Which is terrible. It was just that the new brewery doesn't, it's not the same.
Sure.
So the new brewery doesn't allow us to, we don't have the concrete god, and I tried for a little while, and I've definitely done some things, but it was never the same. We couldn't get the same industry folk out, and at some point we're doing a new QC program down there that we're working on.
I was going to say, I feel like
be-
at the point that you guys are at, you've probably sort of exceeded the tasting and the pursuit of what's really good, and now you can just sort of aim at it, right?
I think that's part of it. I think that educating your staff is part of the QC program.
Right.
Part of that the whole time was that I had access to beers. I am a sick individual and chase product and have ability to get stuff that maybe the normal person doesn't have. And
4 bottles of West E12 we opened.
Yeah, totally.
For episode 1.
And dude, come on, look at the trees behind you, bro.
Speaking of which, actually, can we pop that bottle?
Yeah,
Sean?
totally. Yeah, Sean Jackson. And so
Thank you.
I think that part of it is an education program, right? So I have lived a different trajectory and had an opportunity to drink a lot of different beers and a lot of different time frames when different beers have been amazing. I mean,
Sure.
I won't lie to you right now. If Hales Moss Bay was offered to me right now, I would drink the living crap out of that. That was one of my most favorite beers of 2004. Like, I would never turn that beer down.
Okay.
That beer was gotten rid of when Mongoose became popular.
Yeah.
But honestly, it probably would have. My palate's changed, right? So it's probably not as good as I remember, but I remember that so lovingly.
So your frame of what is actually great has been long established through these tastings, through your own experience, through you being a sick individual, procuring beers that most people could never try. And that's shaped the way that you have tried to not only produce beer, but also produce people who make good beer.
Yeah, I mean, the object is to allow people to be great on their own, right? So I've been lucky to hire people that were already great people, and then try to help them become better. I mean, in whatever aspect or form or fashion that I can do that for them.
Sure.
I'm just lucky. I've been lucky. And I'm ambitious, and I believe in constant improvement. And the E9 is a reflection of just constant improvement. We're not the best ever, but we'll continue to improve and try to become the best ever.
Sure.
Because we just want to continue to improve. And I think that every aspect of breweries, all the breweries that we talk about lovingly and think of as amazing, I think that they have people that are pushing that.
Right.
Even if you're like, oh, that's the same beer all the time, I think that those guys are they're like, hey, we could tweak the water profile. It could be a little bit better.
Right.
We could be a little bit better on our extract. We could be a little bit better on our return. There's a million things in a production facility that you can be a little bit better on all the time.
Yeah.
And constant improvement is the way to be. Personally, that's what I believe in. And I think I've been lucky to have great employees that also have bought into that. So
Yeah.
the E9 is just sort of a product of that mentality.
Yeah. Do you think that contributes to why? So, I mean, E9, there's a lot of brews in Tacoma, and they all do a good job, but E9 certainly seems to have transcended its local market in a way that a lot of other small local hometown breweries don't. Do you think that has been a big contributor? Is sort of the strive to always be the better and not necessarily just be settled or okay with like my tap room is busy every Friday and Saturday. Why do I need to change anything? Like the strive to be better and sort of aim at the beers that you think were great or that you've tried over the years and have been great. Is that why you think E9 maybe has like I have friends in New York sending me pictures of shit that you guys make that they traded for, and it's like this I get this insane hometown pride sort of
Bunch
feeling
of
when I get that
suckers.
shit.
They definitely overpaid for that.
Traded some fight-ins for this. Like, whoa, bro. But
No,
it's got to be part of it.
Again, I've been in the business for a long time, and I've been able to because I love beer. I've been able to network people, and people have been good to me. And maybe my constant improvement concept resonates with other individuals, and we have been brought into situations that, or we've taken advantage of situations that we've been offered.
Sure. Luck favors the prepared, man.
Yeah, and I'm not one to shy away from working hard and going after it. So I finally have scaled down in my work career to probably I go in at 5 and go home at 3 o'clock. 5 days a week, and maybe come in on Saturday just to check it out and make sure shit's going okay.
Sure.
And then but there's definitely a decade of my life that I probably worked 60, 65 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I wasn't like scared of it or ashamed of doing that or felt bad about it or regretted that time. It was just who I was, and I was chasing an ideal.
Not to interrupt, so when you were doing that, right? Like that's a crazy grind. When you were
Yep.
doing that, was it a grind in pursuit of the beers that you
Yes.
considered great? And it wasn't as much a grind in the pursuit of like, we're going to expand this business, we're going to make this many barrels every year.
It didn't
Like,
have anything to do with barrelage.
It was just the product.
right, we were locked in on barrelage.
Right.
Barrelage wasn't growing.
It was the product.
Yeah, it was a product.
Yeah.
It was like, still to this day, I would like to someday make the iconic beer. I think that any brewer that doesn't want to say that they don't want to make the iconic beer
Yeah.
is lying to themselves.
What would it take
what does
for
it
you
take?
to feel like you did that? What would you
Well,
have
it
to
takes
see?
Tacoma buying into having their iconic beer.
Ah.
So can you do that? Is that possible anymore? I don't know. But it's something that I would love to do. Like if I could walk away and be like, hey, man, I created this iconic beer and people drink this.
And my entire community bought into it.
Yeah, my community loves this beer and they like it because it reflects the community. Then I won.
Shit.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful. Well, fuck.
But I haven't done that.
That
I'm
was
not going to lie to you.
that was cooler than anything I would have said. Fuck, man.
We're not,
think that's
we're not,
fucking
we're not
beautiful.
close. We're not
I think
close. No, but
that's
but
fucking
something that I
beautiful.
would strive for.
Because it's like I'm very much like a bloom where you're planted type of dude. Like I also want Tacoma to produce really good beer and really high quality individuals in this industry.
Tacoma did that at one point,
They
right?
did, and it's I think there's
Tacoma.
Yeah.
Literally, Tacoma.
exactly. And then Prohibition, and then 50 years of shit happened, and then we've kind of I think Tacoma maybe has lost the connection with really its DNA and the beer that was in it. And E9, I think, has been a steward of the legacy that exists in that way. And fuck, I mean, I guess on that note, we all just poured a really lovely beer that also might do
Amazing
that. But for everybody in the room,
Cheers.
this is Dre Fontainen's Zenny, which is one of the most famous beers that they produce. And For anybody listening who maybe doesn't follow this sort of thing, Armand de Belder passed away this year. And speaking of like legacies that had stewards, and particularly in the realm of like contemporary sour beer, there's probably nobody in the world more influential than that individual. And so it was like there was sort of a big kind of bowing of the heads in the industry when Armand passed away this year. But we actually have a really beautiful beer by him in front of us, but also Shane being a steward of this industry and particularly of the community that guy built, because he really translated 1,000 years of beer history into the contemporary world. And I don't think anybody would be talking about sour beer, and there wouldn't be a demand for it the way that there is now without that dude. And like the reason why dudes like Sean and Shane are able to produce beer that people actually want to drink, and it's sour and it's funky and it's wild and it harvests natural yeast that's literally made from the air in Tacoma. Like it's a trend that guy started, and yeah, it's a shame to lose one of those guys. But
Amazing individual.
really was, and
I was lucky enough to get to sit down with Armand, and yeah, amazing individual.
yeah. So cheers to that dude, and
Cheers.
yeah, and cheers to Shane, man, and to
Cheers
E9.
to Shane.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks, Shane.
We're I don't know. I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's the fact that you guys are a part of this community and what you have done for Tacoma beer is something that I'm relatively new to this industry. I'm kind of a neophyte, but
I think
like-
that again, I would go back to the fact that I've been lucky. You're giving me a little bit more credit than I deserve. I've
Yeah,
been
shut
able to be the faceplate of really good teams, and you know, I've been lucky to put together really good teams, and hopefully I can continue to do that, and we'll continue to push. You know,
Starts at the top.
that's what's up.
push hard.
Well, fuck. On that note,
Yeah.
cheers.
Cheers.
On that note, 6 beers. No, seriously, man. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out and talking to us for this first
thanks for having
episode.
me
It was
for episode 1, man.
it was a
Stoked
big
by
deal. We won't, we'll be doing this every week and talking about Tacoma in 1,000 different ways and how it relates to this industry. But E9 being such a huge part of it was it was a big deal for you to be here the first time.
Appreciate it. Anytime I can help out.
Right on. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at Grit and Grain Podcast wherever you get your social media and catch new episodes every Friday. Cheers.
Grit and Grain is part of the Channel 253 podcast network. Check out our other shows: Nerd Farmer, Interchangeable White Ladies, Move to Tacoma, Crossing Division, Citizen Tacoma, What Say You, We Are Tacoma, Flounders B Team, and Taco Man.
This is Channel 253.